On a day that felt almost personal in its quiet gravity, the world held its breath as a single, stubborn voice rose above the clamor of power. It wasn't thunder or a flash of steel, but a calm, unwavering decision from India. In that moment, the era of one nation calling all the shots seemed to pause, as if the globe itself were listening for the echo of a new rule: independence in foreign policy. The tale began with a simple question whispered into the corridors of influence. What if the most powerful nation, used to giving orders and watching others obey, found itself watching in silence as one country simply said no and got away with it? India, with its long history of resilience and carefully measured steps, answered with a bold, deliberate no. This wasn't about rebellion for its own sake. It was strategic independence, an assertion that a nation could guard its own interests without surrendering its sovereignty to any other power. New Delhi chose a path defined not by Western narratives or coercive pressures, but by a clear fidelity to national interest. The symbolism of this choice stretched far beyond the decision itself. It was a message to the world. India will not be a vassal state. It would not be bullied, and it would not compromise its long-term strategy for the sake of a momentary nod from Washington. In that moment, a rare kind of diplomacy unfolded. India stood eye to eye with the most powerful country on the planet and refused to blink. It revealed a foreign policy grown sturdier, less about alignment or appeasement and more about assertive independence. The United States, accustomed to shaping narratives and outcomes, found its plots unraveled by India's calm defiance. The world began to see that a developing nation could engage with Russia, China, Europe, and the Middle East without forfeiting its own voice or its autonomy. Humiliation is a harsh word, but it fits the scene. The United States watched as India crafted relationships and strategies that did not hinge on Washington's permission. It wasn't courtesy or concession that did the damage. It was the quiet confidence with which India balanced its ties, diplomatic, economic, and military, across a broad spectrum of partners. The American expectation that it could dictate terms in every corner of the globe was tested and found wanting. Economic sovereignty soon followed. The next bold stroke showed that economic leverage, long wielded by Washington as a weapon, could no longer be relied upon as an unassailable force. When the prices of energy rose and the supply chains tightened, India prioritized its people. It secured oil, gas, and essential commodities from sources outside the orbit the United States had tried to police. Instead of buckling under sanctions or the weight of sanctions, India thrived. Inflation was cushioned, industries stayed steady. This shimmer of economic resilience sent a powerful message. America's financial tools were no longer invincible. The era of unilateral control over the global economy had a new challenger, and the challenger was not hostile but steadfastly pragmatic. Other nations watched, learned, and began to imagine a world where cooperation could flourish outside a Western framework. The ripple of India's independence spread far beyond its borders, reshaping expectations about what was possible when a nation chose resilience over submission. Military partnerships became the third act in this unfolding drama. For decades, the United States had been seen as the ultimate arms provider, the anchor of security for many regions. Yet, India's strategy grew more expansive and more nuanced. It deepened ties with Russia, bought advanced systems like the S-400, and at the same time reached out to France, Israel, and others. It built a defense network on its own terms, not as a client escorted by American permission, but as a sovereign force with diverse strategic partnerships. Threats and sanctions seemed to bounce off India like ripples on a calm lake. The United States warned, urged, and attempted to steer. But India moved ahead, aligning with multiple partners and expanding its capabilities without yielding to ultimatums. This wasn't aggression, it was a quiet display of strength paired with diplomatic cunning. In effect, India showed that defense partnerships could be plural, not a single path, and that sovereignty could be preserved even as a country forged a broad, balanced security architecture. The crowning act was diplomacy itself. India positioned itself not merely as a participant but as a bridge among rival powers. It refused to slide into one camp or another, balancing relations with Russia, the United States, Europe, China, and the Middle East. In doing so, New Delhi didn't just preserve its independence. It earned credibility as a genuine mediator and broker of peace. The world began to see India as a force for reason, a nation capable of standing firm on its principles while maintaining constructive dialogue with all sides. For those who had long framed global politics as a binary struggle, India's maneuvers painted a new map. The world recognized a pathway for smaller and developing nations to navigate great power rivalries without losing sovereignty. The United States, once convinced of its own exclusive grip, found its edges dulled by a country that refused to be cowed, yet remained committed to progress through cooperation. In the end, the story is not one of conquest or defiance for its own sake. It is a story of restraint, vision, and the courage to chart a course that honors a people's needs and aspirations. It is the story of a nation that said no to coercion, yes to resilience, and perhaps most importantly, yes to a world where